Foreign Coast Guard ships appear near disputed areas. Maritime militia vessels gather around reefs. Supply missions are blocked. Dangerous maneuvers happen at sea. And every time Manila tries to defend its position, the pressure doesn't disappear. It grows. But this time, something is different. The Philippines is not standing alone. In Balikatan 2026, the United States is there, Australia is there, Japan is there, Canada is there, France is there, New Zealand is there, and for China, this is not just another annual military exercise. This is a signal that pressure against the Philippines may be creating the opposite effect. More countries are moving closer to Manila, more partners are showing up, and more military cooperation is happening near one of the most sensitive waters in the world. Balikatan 41 2026 is the most expansive iteration in the exercise's history, involving around 17,000 personnel, with partner nations including Australia, Canada, France, Japan, and New Zealand, plus 13 additional observer nations. So the question is no longer, is Balikatan just a routine military drill? The real question is, why does this exercise make China so uncomfortable? To understand that, we have to look at the map. Balikatan is not just a military exercise. The word Balikatan means shoulder to shoulder. On paper, it is a long-running annual exercise between the Philippines and the United States. So at first glance, some people may think this is just another routine drill. But Balikatan 2026 is different. It is bigger, it is more multinational, and it sends a much stronger message. The opening ceremony was attended by military officials and diplomats from 7 participating nations: the Philippines, the United States, Australia, Japan, Canada, France, and New Zealand. The U.S. Marine Corps described it as the most expansive Balikatan exercise to date. That matters because the Philippines is not just another country on the map. It sits on the edge of the South China Sea. To the north, there are routes connected to Taiwan. To the west, there are disputed waters that have become a major source of tension between Manila and Beijing. To the east, there is access to the wider Pacific. So when multiple countries bring troops, ships, aircraft, cyber units, and military capabilities into the Philippines, China does not see it as a simple training event. China sees a message. And that message is clear. The Philippines can no longer be pressured as if it is standing alone. Before we go deeper, write proud in the comment section, because here at Force 9, we do not just watch military exercises as a spectacle. We read the strategy, the power, and the hidden message behind every major maneuver. Don't forget to subscribe and like so analysis like this can keep coming. Sharp, serious, and easy to understand. Why does China feel disturbed? China is not disturbed simply because a military exercise is happening. China itself conducts major military exercises. China deploys warships. China sends aircraft. China uses Coast Guard vessels and maritime militia to project pressure in contested waters. The problem for Beijing is different. This time, the countries gathering around the Philippines are not random countries. They are part of a wider network. The United States has a defense treaty with the Philippines. Australia is a close U.S. ally. Japan is a major maritime power in East Asia. Canada, France, and New Zealand show that security in this region is no longer seen as a local issue only. From Beijing's perspective, this looks like a strategic fence. Not a physical fence, but a military and diplomatic one. One country can be pressured. 2 countries can still be challenged. But when the Philippines starts receiving open military support from the United States, Japan, Australia, Canada, France, and New Zealand, China's calculations become more complicated. This is why Beijing reacted sharply. China criticized the exercise and warned that the region did not need external forces, creating division and confrontation. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun also warned countries involved that binding themselves together in the name of security would be like playing with fire.
太地区最需要的是和平安宁，最不需要的是引入外部力量，制造分裂对抗。我们想提醒有关国家，一味在安全上相互捆绑，只会引火烧身，反噬自身。
In plain strategic language, China's message is basically this: do not turn the Philippines into a military platform against China. But from the Philippine side, the message is different. We have the right to work with partners to defend our security. And that is where the clash begins. China wants South China Sea disputes to remain a bilateral matter between Beijing and Manila. But the Philippines is bringing more partners in, and the more countries show up, the harder it becomes for China to pressure Manila quietly. One of the most important things about Balikatan 2026 is the list of countries involved. If it were only the United States and the Philippines, China could frame it as an old pattern. But with Canada, Australia, Japan, France, and New Zealand joining, the message changes. Canada, for example, is not only observing from the sidelines. The Canadian government confirmed that the Canadian Armed Forces will actively participate in Balikatan 2026, including personnel and capabilities from the Royal Canadian Navy, Canadian Army, Royal Canadian Air Force, CAF Cyber Command, and Canadian Special Operations Forces Command. Canada also stated that, while it had participated as an observer in previous years, this year Canadian personnel would train shoulder to shoulder with partners in areas such as air and missile defense, coastal defense, logistics and sustainment, medical support, maritime strike operations, and multinational coordination. That is not a small detail. That means Canada is moving from watching the exercise to actually training inside it. Australia's role is also significant. ABC reported that the Australian Defence Force sent about 400 members, while Japan sent about 1,400 troops and became involved in a much larger way than before. This shows one thing clearly. These countries are not only supporting the Philippines with words, they are showing up in military training. And in the South China Sea, power is not measured only by the number of ships. Power is also measured by who is willing to stand beside whom. Japan is the most sensitive factor. Among all the countries involved, Japan carries a special weight. For China, Japan's presence in a major military exercise in the Philippines is not a small matter. There is history, there is mistrust, there are disputes in the East China Sea, and there is China's concern that Japan is becoming more active militarily beyond its immediate area. So when Japan joins Balikatan 2026, Beijing does not read it as a technical military detail. Beijing reads it as part of a larger shift. Japan is becoming more involved in Southeast Asian security, and if Japan grows closer to the Philippines, while the Philippines grows closer to the United States, then from China's perspective, its room for maneuver becomes narrower. The Taiwan factor makes this even more sensitive. The northern Philippines sits near key routes connected to Taiwan and the Western Pacific. In a Taiwan crisis, the sea lanes and islands around northern Luzon would become extremely important. ABC reported that some coastal defense drills were set to occur fewer than 200 kilometers from Taiwan's southern coast, even though the US and Philippine militaries said no exercises would take place near Taiwan. Coastal defense drills, fewer than 200 kilometers from Taiwan's southern coast. So when Japan takes part in a major exercise in the Philippines, China sees two major issues coming together: the South China Sea and Taiwan. For Beijing, that combination is extremely serious. What are they actually training for? Balikatan 2026 is not just marching, speeches, and photo opportunities. The training covers serious military scenarios. The US Marine Corps said multilateral training across air, land, sea, space, and cyber would begin during the exercise. It also described logistics work across the archipelago before the opening ceremony, including the transport, offload, and distribution of equipment and sustainment. Another major element is maritime training. U.S. Indo-Pacific Command said more than 17,000 personnel from the Philippines, United States, Australia, Japan, Canada, France, and New Zealand would train shoulder to shoulder, while the multinational maritime exercise included anti-submarine warfare, gunnery exercises, deck landing qualifications, search and rescue, and medical evacuation exercises. There are two key concepts here: coastal defense and distributed logistics. Coastal defense means defending the coastline and nearby waters. For an island nation like the Philippines, this is critical. Distributed logistics means spreading supplies, equipment, and military support across many locations instead of relying on one large base. Why does this matter? Because in modern conflict, large bases can become easy targets. If all forces are gathered in one place, an adversary only has to focus on one location. But if sensors, ammunition, ships, troops, air defense, and supply routes are spread across many islands, then the network becomes much harder to disable. This is extremely relevant for the Philippines. The Philippines does not need to control every inch of the sea to defend itself. It needs to make certain waters too risky for an opponent to enter freely. That concept is often called sea denial. It does not always mean dominating the sea. It means making the sea dangerous enough that the other side has to think twice. And Balikatan 2026 is testing that idea on a large scale. China is angry because its pressure tactics become harder. For years, one of China's strongest tools in the South China Sea has been gradual pressure. Not open war, not a full invasion, but constant pressure. Coast Guard ships appear, maritime militia vessels gather. Philippine ships are shadowed, supply missions are challenged. Psychological pressure builds over time. These are often called gray zone tactics. They sit somewhere between peace and war. The goal is not only to control physical space. The goal is also to control the opponent's mindset, to make Manila ask, can we really keep resisting this pressure? But Balikatan 2026 sends a very different message. The message is, the Philippines may be smaller than China, but the Philippines is not alone. And that is exactly why China is uncomfortable. Because the more countries train with the Philippines, the harder it becomes for China to describe the dispute as only a China-Philippines issue. China wants to say, do not bring in outside forces. The Philippines wants to say, we will build partnerships to protect our own security. And Balikatan becomes the stage where those two messages collide. Does this mean war is coming? Not necessarily. A large military exercise does not automatically mean war is about to happen. In many cases, exercises like this are designed to prevent war. They do that by showing readiness. They show coordination. They show that allies and partners can respond together. This is called deterrence. The basic idea is simple. If the cost of aggression looks too high, the other side may think twice before taking action. But deterrence also carries risk. The more ships, aircraft, troops, and weapon systems operate in the same tense region, the higher the chance of miscalculation. One ship gets too close. One aircraft makes a dangerous pass. One side misreads the other side's intention. One small incident turns into a major diplomatic crisis. That is why this situation must be taken seriously. Balikatan 2026 does not mean war tomorrow, but it does show that the region is entering a new phase, a phase where military exercises are no longer just training events. They are political signals. They are alliance signals. They are a way for countries to show their position without firing a shot in a real conflict. What does this mean for Southeast Asia? For Southeast Asia, this is an important moment. Many countries in the region want balance. They do not want to be too close to Washington, but they also do not want to be too dependent on Beijing. But the pressure in the South China Sea makes that balance harder. The Philippines has chosen a clearer direction. It is strengthening its relationship with the United States. It is expanding cooperation with Japan and Australia. And now Canada, France, and New Zealand are also present in a more visible way. This suggests that Manila has reached a serious conclusion. Facing China alone is too risky. So the Philippines is building a network, not only with the United States, but also with Japan, Australia, Canada, France, and New Zealand. If this pattern continues, the South China Sea will become more than a maritime dispute. On one side, China wants to keep control over the pace and pressure of the dispute. On the other side, the Philippines is trying to make sure that every major move against it gets international attention. This could strengthen Manila's position, but it could also make the region more tense. because China is unlikely to stay silent. China could respond with more patrols, more military exercises, more diplomatic pressure, or more gray zone operations near disputed areas. So Balikatan 2026 is not the end of the tension. It may be the beginning of a more intense chapter. In the end, China's anger over Balikatan 2026 is not only about who joined the exercise. It is about the balance of power changing around the Philippines. In the past, China could pressure Manila with the assumption that the Philippines would struggle to find real support. But now, the opposite is happening. The Philippines is becoming a major focus. The United States is reinforcing its commitment. Japan is becoming more active. Australia is deepening its role. Canada is no longer just observing. France and New Zealand are also part of the wider picture. And all of this is happening in one of the most sensitive areas in the world, near the South China Sea, near routes connected to Taiwan, near the strategic heart of the Indo-Pacific. So is China really furious? Most likely, yes, but not because China is simply afraid. China is disturbed because Balikatan 2026 shows that Beijing's pressure strategy may be pushing other countries closer together. And in the world of military strategy, the most dangerous opponent is not only the one with strength, it is the one that starts gaining friends. So what do you think? Can Balikatan 2026 really help the Philippines resist Chinese pressure? Or will it make the region even more tense? Write your thoughts in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and stay with Force 9 for the next sharp and serious analysis.